Hello everyone. Today we're going to be doing something very special. We're going to be building and setting up the new Deadrabbit 24mm RDA. So, pretty beautiful little device. I chose the gold and red because swag. Alright, so let's take a look at it. Let's bring the camera in a little closer. So I have it attached to my mod right now. Of course, safety first. You always want to take your batteries out because you don't want to ever have any accidents. You don't want to accidentally hit that button. So empty mod, I'm going to pull that top cap right off, and that's going to show us this build deck. It's pretty unique. It's not like your Velocity style where you have 2 posts. You actually have 4 posts here, so you have clear color differentiation of your positives and your negatives, and that's where the magic is going to happen. So for this build, I just have some standard Clapton coils. Got some 6 wraps on there at about a 3mm diameter. So what you're going to need to do to build on this is you're going to need a very small flathead screwdriver. So let's just go ahead and open these up. These little screws right here, you don't want to open them all the way, you just want them opened up wide enough to be able to fit your leads in. So there's a couple different ways that you can build on this. I'm going to put in a dual build. But if you don't want a dual build and you just want to do a single, that's fine. You can always just have your coils set in a single across like this way, or you can even do them diagonally, which would be probably a little bit better airflow on a single build. But for all intents and purposes, we are going to do a double coil build on this. So I always use the little coil jig. It's a little Kuro coil, so that just kind of keeps everything nice and tight while you're working with it. So a couple different ways that you can do this. You're going to want to set these down in, and as you can see, they go straight through. So you're going to want to trim these before you install them to your right diameter. Handy little coil snips. So I'm going to cut these about the same length and give myself just enough room to work with when I install them. Something just like that. And we're going to set this right down inside. If you have a little bit of overlap, that's fine. You can always snip them from underneath. The major thing to watch out for is to make sure that your coil is not set on the posts themselves. And of course, to try to keep everything on the table. Let's not knock everything off. So we're going to straighten these leads out a little bit, try to make them parallel with each other. And we're going to set them down inside. Just like that. So let's go ahead and tighten these down. Nice and tight. Alright, so once those are tightened up, you're going to want to work out your clearance issues. So that's why the jig is really important to use. Use the jig to get a little bit of leverage on it to be able to pull them up and stretch them away from the build deck. So remember, you don't want this resting on the build deck. You want there to be a little bit of clearance so that nothing is shorting out and touching. So something a little bit like that. So straighten it up and remove your jig. And we're going to repeat that on the exact same side, or on the opposite side. We're going to trim these. And we're going to install. And you can see, tightening them down, it's going to make them a little bit crooked. Of course, it's going to pull a little bit closer to the build deck, but use your Kuro to get a little bit of leverage on there, twist it back in, and pull it up. So this one actually has to come up just a little bit more. A lot of this is going to be trial and error. So it's going to be learning the best way for you to install your builds and what feels best to you. And there's different variances of how you can do this. That's what makes these rebuildables so much fun, is you experiment, you tinker, and then once you have something that just works perfectly, you know, it's always gratifying. Good flavor production, good flavor, everything. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and pull that out. So now the next tool that we're going to use, it's very important that you have these ceramic tip tweezers. These are pretty cheap. You can get them in the Coil Master kits, you can get them in pretty much anything, or you can just order them offline. Ceramic tips are very important because it helps disperse a little bit of that heat so you're not putting metal on metal. So I'm installing my batteries back, and the first thing we're going to want to check is our resistance on these. So now this is saying that's about a 0.42, which each of these is a 0.8. So a dual build of 2.8s, it's going to come out to about a 0.4, so that's pretty accurate. So let's go ahead and crank our wattage down around, I like around 70 watts. And now we're going to do all of our test firing. And we're going to make sure we don't have any hot spots, and we're also going to make these look nice and pretty. So just always remember to pulse them. And you can see we're already starting to get some heat there. One's heating up a little bit more than the other, and we're going to work that out. So with your ceramic tweezers, you want to just push these together. You want to get them nice and close. Once they're heated up, they're a little bit easier to use. It's almost like you're forging your own thing, kind of like a vape smith. Alright, squeeze those together. Watch out for the hot spots. And you want them to be pretty symmetrical. That's really the key here, is you don't want one vaping warmer than the other or heating up faster than the other. So that actually looks pretty good. So we're going to set that off to the side, and we're going to go ahead and let that cool down while we get our cotton prepped. So this is probably the most important part of putting in your build after you work out your hot spots. If you don't wick this correctly, you're not going to get good burns. So my general rule is you take enough cotton to make a roll that's about twice the diameter of the coil itself. So I'm going to pull this apart, and it's going to help make it nice and fluffy. Yeah, little nice, happy, fluffy cotton strip, just like that. Right. So a piece about like that. Try to make it uniform, pack that in. And we're going to do something called a Scottish roll. We're just going to lightly fold it, and then we're going to roll it down. As you can see, it's going to be a little bit too thick, so we're going to take some off of that. This is back to that trial and error thing, learning what works best for you. And now that is just about perfect. I'm going to take just a little bit more off of it. Alright, so we're going to take one side, twist into a little needle. Make sure that's nice and cooled down. You do not want to burn yourself. I'm going to pull it through just like that. Get about that. Let's take our handy dandy scissors. And we're going to snip this at a decent length to where it can still get down inside of these juice wells on the side. So I like to just fold it over, size it up on that, and we're going to snip there. Do that on the same side, opposite side, and we're going to snip. Let's get us another piece of cotton here. Now when it comes to power settings of how you want to run your device, that's going to depend on what the resistance of your coils are. So after you get everything installed and you know what your resistance is, and you can test these beforehand, there's a generator online. You just go in and it's like an ohm resistance meter. You can put in the type of coil that you're using, the material that you're using, how many wraps, everything like that, and it'll tell you your resistance. But for me, the tried and true is to just make what you think is going to work, whatever you learn, whatever's easiest for you, and then install it, and then use your regulated mod to read that resistance. So because this is a 0.4 resistance, I probably don't want to run this anything over like 100 watts. 100 watts is going to be nice and warm, it's going to produce a lot of flavor, but I'm probably going to run this around 85 watts, and that's going to give me more than enough of what I need. So now that we have our cotton here, we're just going to fluff it up a little bit, make like little bow ties out of it. We're going to take our tweezers, and we're just going to fold them right down into our juice wells. Both sides. Nice and fluffy. Look at that. The fluffier it is, the better it's going to wick. It gives you a little bit more surface area for your juice to collect, and it's going to save you from dripping. The really cool thing about this is that it actually comes with a squonk pen too. So just by taking your firing pin out of the 510 connector in the bottom of this, you can attach that squonk pen and be able to run a device that you can just squirt your juice right up in there. So technically you'll never even have to take your top off, and you'll never have to drip. You just have to refill your squonk bottle, which makes it really convenient. For today though, we're just going to do some standard dripping. Go old school. So you're going to want to saturate your cotton really nice. Get some down inside the juice well, and you'll see this starts to shrink up a little bit as juice collects. It's going to solidify it a little bit more than what it is. Should get plenty on top. This can be a little tedious. It takes up a little bit of juice too. But you don't want to get that dry hit. Nothing's worse than a dry hit. Alright, get some juice down here. The great thing about the Deadrabbit is it has a decent little juice well in the bottom. It's like a 5mm depth, so good enough space for you to keep a reserve in there. Saves you, if you're driving. Remember kids, don't drip and drive. Alright, I think this thing's ready for a test fire. Let's test this out. Where are we at? 70 watts. I'm going to go ahead and turn this up to 85. Nice 85 watt burn. Not bad at all. I can actually probably turn that up a little bit more. So let's go ahead and hit it at 90. See what that looks like. Oh yeah, nice plume. A little bit of sputtering and spitting. That fresh cotton starting to settle in. It's getting used to having some heat put to it. Of course, this is really saturated. I've been burned way too many times with dry cotton hits, so I always overdo it a little bit in the beginning. All right. Ooh, yeah. Beautiful. Your top cap goes back on. Always make sure your airflow is wide open at first. You can dilate it later. This airflow is really cool because it's slanted. So that brings in air like a vortex straight down onto the coils and then back up through your chuff cap. So you always get a nice, cool, well-flavored hit. Keep paper towels on hand. All right, so let's take our first rip off of it. It's not bad. 90 watts is a little warm on that coil build. So this is definitely going to be like an 80 watt burn, but you're not going to get better cloud production even at 80 watts. Other devices, you can run them at 120, 130 watts. It's never going to compare to the amount of flavor that you get out of something like this. And it's a nice, beautiful, snazzy build. Alright, as always, if you guys have any questions on how to build on your device, you can check us out at Totally Wicked in Bloomingdale. You can give us a call, anything like that. We're always here. We'll be able to hook you up. Alright.